Hello, and welcome back to the OT Star Wars cast, where we'll cover anything and everything from the galaxy far, far away. I'm your host, Herok, with...
Leo.
And today we're going to be making an introduction video at the request of MSJ to introduce anyone who isn't that familiar with the galaxy far, far away to everything and anything they need to know to get into Star Wars discussion here. Of course, we recommend that you watch the 6 movies, at the very least, because that's the easiest way to take part in Star Wars conversation. But if you just want a primer or a refresher because you don't have time or the ability to watch the movies, this is the cast to listen to. So, we're going to start off with the discussion about the Jedi, Sith, and the Force today. Basically, the Jedi Order are the peacekeepers or the policemen of the galaxy. They keep everything in order. And we are referring to the Jedi Order from before the fall of the Jedi Order, which we'll cover later in this very episode. Luke's Jedi Order is something that we'll discuss on a different podcast in the future, because this is just an introductory cast. But with the basic Jedi Order, there are a few different ranks of Jedi. There are your Padawans, your your younglings, the people who are just starting to be Jedi on their way to journey. You become eventually, after training for so long, you'll become a Jedi Knight, where you'll make your own lightsaber. And more about lightsabers later. As a Jedi Knight, you'll be going on missions for the Jedi Council, which is the Council of Elders. And as a Jedi Knight, you also get to be in charge of your own Padawan. So that's basically the Jedi Order. That's the basic ranks. After you're a Knight for so long, you can move up to the rank of Jedi Master. And basically, as a Jedi Master, you're a master of your saber, and you're also a master of the Force. And you're a part of the Jedi Council, which is what helps make decisions that cover everything about the Jedi. It determines who can train what Padawan, and things like that. On the other hand of the coin, you have the Sith, and I'll let my co-host take it away.
Well, basically, the Sith is like the forces behind the curtain, or how I would like to put simply is that they're like the corrupted politician that are influencing like the Senate and stuff. You have like just like the Jedi Order, but then really simplified compared to the latter is that they on their hand of their hierarchy is that there's only the role of two, a master and an apprentice, and with that, they will eventually, like the Padawan will eventually strike down the master due to power and then self empowerment and stuff. Wouldn't you agree, Chris?
Yeah, basically the Sith are really tough. They're evil. They do what they want. They're motivated by greed, and they're motivated by greed and power. They want everything for themselves and anything for themselves. They're like, no, we'll do this. As Rikku mentioned, they have the rule of two. Basically, with the master and apprentice, the master teaches the apprentice, and they both are gaining power along the process, until the apprentice feels, I've surpassed you, master, and tries to strike them down. So that's how the Sith really continue. And yes, even though they're a master-apprentice relationship, you might be thinking, hey, Herok, why would a Sith Lord take on an apprentice if they know that they're going to kill them? But to that, the reason why they take on their apprentices is so that the Sith Order can continue onward afterward. Because if once the Sith dies out, their knowledge would die out with them. So to make sure that everything continues, that's why they take on their apprentice, even though it doesn't ever help them in the end, because their apprentice usually kills them. Do you have anything else to add, or should we proceed to the Force part of the discussion about Jedi and Sith?
I just love their lightsabers. Red. Let's continue.
Okay. So basically, another major aspect of Star Wars that both the Jedi and Sith harness is the Force. The Force is a living, breathing entity in the Star Wars universe, and yes, it can be measured through what they call midichlorians, and basically, midichlorians are how Force sensitive someone is, and midichlorians...
And it's also genetic.
basically, midichlorians doesn't really take away from the Force being a living entity, because it's just a measurement. Just like you can measure how much of some substance is in water. Just imagine midichlorians as just some small substance in the living, breathing water of the Force, essentially. I don't know how to make any other analogy. Point is, they're insignificant, and they don't matter in the end. They're just made of freaking calorians. Sorry about that, guys. It's people just take that way out of context, but in any case, what the Force is it's a living, breathing entity, which the Jedi and the Sith and all living things draw power from. However, with the Jedi and the Sith, they can use and manipulate the Force to their advantage. The Jedi tend to be very passive, very unemotional, so they use the Force in very practical ways that help others. They actually just use it to help themselves. Like, they can use it to enhance their running, their jumping. They use it, to push objects away from them, or to pull objects towards them. They use it as an extension of themselves. On the other hand, Rikku, take it away.
With the Sith, by the way, they use it more on like aggression and more on like attack and stuff, like Force Lightning and Force Choke, which people are mostly seeing in the franchise, which is very prominent for whoever character it is.
Right, because Sith will, use use the Force in ways that the Jedi won't, because Jedi, as protectors, they're not going to use the Force to choke someone to death. That's not what they do. The reason they use lightsabers, they use them to chop off limbs to make sure that they can't retaliate, not to kill, as opposed to the Sith, who will use a lightsaber to just kill anyone who gets in their way.
Indeed. Like there's this, like, if you watch any of the movies, like the third one in particularly, it's been proven that that most Jedis are very honor and honor bound.
Yes. Like, that's actually part of the reason why Anakin does turn to the dark side, because Windu was going against the Jedi Order, and Anakin was in a very emotional state. And emotions are a big no-no for a Jedi for various reasons. They try to stay as emotionless as possible. They don't feel love or attachment, and that's part of the reason of their downfall. Yoda even mentions that we were wrong at the end of Revenge of the Sith, after the Jedi Order, as it was wiped out.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, they're how would you call it? Monks. I mean, Jedis could be related as to Buddhist monks or stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
removing emotions and such.
Essentially, they're space monk police. That's just how you need to view the Jedi and the Sith. But yeah, if the Force is living, breathing, it just flows through everyone and everything. Some people don't believe in the Force because they don't have the ability to manipulate it, but both the Jedi and the Sith follow the ways of the Force because they have control over it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's basically the gist of the Jedi, the Sith, and the Force. And those are, prominent factors everywhere in Star Wars. Another really prominent thing that everyone who knows anything about Star Wars knows about is the lightsabers. And basically,
love them.
Lightsabers are the weapons used by both the Jedi and the Sith as their tools. The Jedi use them as peacekeeping weapons. They feel they're very elegant, very refined, while the Sith, on the other hand, are very brutish, and they use them as a means to get what they want. Rikku, can you tell me a little more about the lightsabers?
Well, besides that, they have really pretty colors, but they are very unique in ways they're not just normal weapons. They can use for other things. Not only the Jedis have them, but bounty hunters sometimes have the lightsabers.
Right, and because they're laser swords, basically some of the abilities of a lightsaber is that they have the ability to cut through anything. Like, a lightsaber can cut through steel and other metals. They can cut through pretty much anything, except for
just like butter.
Yeah, they basically turn anything and everything into hot butter that it just slices right through. Let's see. What else about Jedi? What else about the lightsaber? They're made using crystals. Basically, the crystals are what determine the color of the lightsaber. Your reds are, synthetic. They're created, while the blues, greens, and purples are all naturally occurring colors.
And they kind of determine what kind of Jedi they are.
Yeah. Like your lightsaber. Also, everyone builds their own lightsaber. So your lightsaber...
Oh, definitely, with the Force.
Yeah, you build your lightsaber with the Force, so it's unique to yourself. Like, some people make lightsabers made out of their keepsakes. Like, someone has a lightsaber made from a Rancor tooth, because that's just a quirk of their personality. It helps determine how they fight and everything. Like, Windu's lightsaber is used more for aggression, while someone like Qui-Gon's lightsaber is used for peacekeeping.
Force.
Yeah, Force.
Yeah.
And both Windu and Qui-Gon were Jedi Masters in the old Jedi Order, for those of you who don't know.
And if you notice, for the blue lightsabers, those are usually like the more like the attackers or the aggression type of knights of the Jedis.
Yeah.
Like, they're more hands-on compared to the other colors.
Yeah. Because you only see one purple lightsaber, and that's Mace Windu's. But Windu is special because he's Samuel L. Jackson. He was like, I want a purple saber, and then Lucas is like, get Samuel L. Jackson a purple saber. You traditionally...
That actually happened?
Yeah, that's a thing that happened. But
I didn't know that. I thought it was because he was badass.
Well, that too. Basically, Mace Windu, aka Samuel L. Jackson, gets things done. That's something you don't need to know Star Wars for. That's just Samuel L. Jackson. But that's beside the point.
Right.
You'll usually see both either of the blue, which is the more aggressive, the more hands-on approach, and green, which signifies Force, like more Force-sensitive Jedi. And then red. The red is traditionally a Sith. The red is traditionally a Sith weapon, because, it's synthetic, and things like that.
And if those are wondering about why does Luke have different lightsaber colors, it's because he was still under training, and then he realized what kind of Jedi he was, so that's why he was switched to green later on.
Right, because the original lightsaber he had, the blue lightsaber, it was his father's lightsaber. And it was his father's lightsaber before his father fell to the darkness. Spoilers that you probably already know. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father, aka Anakin Skywalker. So when he went to the Sith, he got a different lightsaber. How Obi-Wan obtained Anakin's... Obi-Wan obtained Anakin's lightsaber at the end of Revenge of the Sith, but we'll cover that a little bit later. Basically...
Or another episode.
Well, we'll be covering it in, the breakdown of Anakin's journey in a few minutes.
Okay.
So that's why Luke has the blue lightsaber to begin, and then he switches to the green lightsaber, because the green lightsaber is the lightsaber he built himself when he became a fully realized Jedi Knight.
And those are wondering how he did it. He did it under a cave in the lead scenes of the Return of the Jedi, if those are wondering.
So, let me think. Is there anything else that we need to cover based on the lightsabers, or no?
Well, we will say for another time that we will talk about our favorite move styles for the lightsaber and stuff, but that's for another episode, though.
Right, because there are different fighting styles, but Rikku did want to say what his favorite color of saber was. Mine is personally green, so what is yours?
Synthetic, because I'm all for Sith, baby.
So, you like the red synthetic ones?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next thing that we want to cover is Anakin's journey through Star Wars in general, because Star Wars episodes 1 through 6 are the story of Anakin Skywalker and his fall to the dark side, and then his rise of being a hero again. So basically, we're going to cover everything in very short detail. We're not going to elaborate much, because it's just going to be an introduction. It's not going to be to say everything in detail. So, Rikku, where do we find young Anakin Skywalker when we first meet him in Star Wars Episode 1?
Well, when we first were introduced to episode one, by the way, it doesn't start off with the Skywalkers for sure, right?
No,
It started with
Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan negotiating on a ship.
yeah. Mm-hmm. And then it leads later on though to where the plot needed to go to, like to Tatooine, where we finally meet Luke Skywalker. I mean, I'm not Luke Skywalker. Anakin. Sorry, I get them mixed up that time.
Yeah, and basically, Anakin is this force-sensitive slave child who was conceived by the Force to be the chosen one who will bring balance to the Force. Basically,
Indeed.
His mother was impregnated by the Force, kind of like a virgin birth. Well, it was a virgin birth, essentially. And she had Anakin, who would become the most powerful Force wielder ever.
Did they ever mention about Anakin's father or not?
Anakin's father is the Force.
Really?
Yes, Anakin's father is the Force.
Ah, I've been always wondering about that.
Yeah.
They never really went in depth with that.
Well,
in the movies.
It's because when Qui-Gon asked Simi Skywalker, Anakin's mother, what about the father? She says, it was a miracle. I had him by myself, signifying that he was like a virgin birth. Kind of like Jesus, because, well, I'm not sure what everyone's religious beliefs are, but but I'm pretty sure everyone knows about Jesus and how he was born of the Virgin Mary. And there are and there are a lot of parallels between Anakin and Jesus, like how Anakin and both Anakin and Jesus were conceived from virgins, and how both of them are the chosen ones. But enough about that. Essentially, Anakin leaves Tatooine with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to learn to be a Jedi, because he was very Force sensitive, being conceived by the Force and all.
Mm-hmm.
So at first they decide that they don't want. At first the Jedi Council figures, hey, Anakin being 8 at the time was too old to be trained, and so the Jedi Council at first is like, well, we don't want to train him. And Qui-Gon goes, even if you guys won't train him, I will, and that leads to a standoff. After Qui-Gon's death at the hands of Darth Maul on Naboo, Obi-Wan decides to take over and to go where his master couldn't, seeing as his master died, and he was going to go, no, I'm going to train this boy now. However, by that time, the Jedi Council had decided, you know what, we can train this guy, because he's super Force sensitive and everything. And that's basically... Mm-hmm. And one other thing that you need to know about Episode 1 in Anakin's journey is this is where Anakin first meets Padme. Padme is the queen of Naboo, which is the planet where everything takes place. Other than is where the main conflict takes place in Episode 1. Basically, Naboo is under siege, so Queen Amidala goes to get the help from the Senate, and the Senate's like, well, we don't want to help you, and so she's like, fine, I'll take matters into my own hand. I have to save my own planet. So, on their journey, since Padme is journeying with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan to see the Jedi Council on Coruscant and the Senate, she meets Anakin along the way, and basically Anakin feels that Padme is an angel. So, yeah, that's where Anakin meets his love interest for the first time. And that's pretty much everything you need to know about Episode 1 and Anakin's journey.
Well, and how he grew up really fast in the second movie, like growth spur, right?
Well, it's not he didn't grow really fast, it was because there was a time skip between Episodes 1 and 2 of, I want to say, 10 or so years.
Alright.
where Anakin is where Anakin as a Padawan is, journeying with Master Kenobi. Kenobi, yeah. Anakin is journeying with Obi-Wan Kenobi because he is still currently a Jedi Knight in Episode 2. I believe he transitions from Knight to Master at some point during the Clone Wars, actually. So, the main thing about Episode 2 in Anakin's journey is this is where Anakin first tastes the evils of the dark side. Basically, he becomes close with Chancellor Palpatine, who is looking to seek emergency powers from the Senate to take over, but that's his plan, but that doesn't come into play until Episode 3. Basically, that's the beginning of the friendship between those two. And also, after years of training, Anakin finally meets Padme again.
And falls in love deeply harder.
What?
And falls in love much more harder.
Yes, this is where he falls in love, which is against the Jedi Code of Conduct. Another thing that Anakin does that he shouldn't have, that shows where he's going to the dark side, is he returns to his home planet of Tatooine. And on Tatooine, he goes to see his mother again. However, his mother is taken away from their home by sand people, and he responds before he goes after his mother. This famous line of, "I hate sand." I figured I would throw that in there. Also, keep in mind that we are not covering the major events of the movies. We're just covering everything in Anakin's journey. For a much more fleshed out version, you have to watch the movies for yourself. I'm sorry, we'll be going into more details with the individual episodes of the podcast that are based on the individual episodes. So sorry if there's more that you want to hear, other than Anakin and his ridiculousness. But basically, Anakin goes after the sand people who kidnapped his mother, and when he finds her dead at their hands, he goes berserk. This is the first time Anakin gives into emotions. He just gives into his anger, and he just slaughters everyone. He slaughters the sand people, man, woman, and child. Where Padme responds to him, "Anakin, it's okay. They were monsters," but he's like, "No, I'm the real monster here. I killed them indifferently, all through anger," which is not the Jedi way. It's not the Jedi way. And then, after the whole ordeal with his mother, Anakin goes to meet up with Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan's been captured on this planet. So when Obi-Wan's captured, Anakin gets captured as well. But this is when the Jedi Cavalry arrives. After the Jedi Cavalry arrives to save both Anakin and Obi-Wan go after Dooku, who was the one who set up the trap for them to begin with. And this is where Anakin fights Dooku, loses, and the most important thing about this scene is Anakin loses his hand. So he has to have his hand replaced with a robotic artificial hand. And then, in the last scene of Attack of the Clones, Anakin and Padme finally get married, even though that's against what the Jedi Order says. So Rikku, what do you think of Anakin's, the first time Anakin descends into darkness, into madness, of seeing the Sand People killing his mother, where he just responds with anger and hatred? That's not the Jedi way.
It's not the Jedi way, but I wouldn't respond the same way. I mean, my mom dying like that in front of me, I would go, insane after that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And if I were, going through that, I feel like the Jedi Order back then was way more, way too uptight. And I feel like they should let their emotions out. And it contradicts what sometimes, when it became with Obi-Wan.
Right.
I remember, later on in the movie, he confessed that he treated, Anakin as a brother, which again kind of conflicts what they were saying with
Yeah,
saying with having emotions.
right, because they say that only the Sith deals in absolute. However, the Jedi Order was also corrupt in their own ways. But do you have anything else that you want to say about episodes 1 or 2 before we go into episode 3, which is very important and a very pivotal step in Anakin's journey?
No, the only thing I can say is I can relate to what Anakin was going through.
Right?
Like, like emotions like that, and me being married and all. Like, if that ever happened to my loved ones, I would do exactly the same thing as Anakin would do. And to Hayden, to the actor's credit, he did portray a strong sense of hatred with just expressions alone
Yeah.
in those senses. Despite everybody hating on the actor for having a robotic way of acting, but
Hmm.
his expression showed much more differently.
Right.
That's about it.
Okay, well, and now here's the big one, Revenge of the Sith. This is where Anakin's journey reaches its climax, where Anakin stops being Anakin Skywalker and falls to become Emperor Vader. So, this is what happened. At the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin and Obi-Wan are on an infiltration mission to save the Chancellor Palpatine because he has been captured by Count Dooku. So they go so they go to save Palpatine. So during the fight between Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Dooku, Obi-Wan gets knocked unconscious, leaving Anakin to fight Dooku, and Anakin being emotional and being spurred on by Palpatine, who is this evil emperor who's manipulative and doing things from behind the scenes. He urges Anakin to get revenge, because Anakin first cuts off both of Dooku's hands as an act of defiance after Dooku cut off his hands. Normally, a Jedi would leave it at that and spare him. However, with Palpatine goading him on, telling him to do it, to finish him off, Anakin gives in and he kills Dooku in that instance. And this is where you can start to see Palpatine's influence, like, crazily affect Anakin. Especially since afterward, Anakin starts having visions of his loved ones starting to die, and Anakin's like, no, I don't want this. What can I do? What can I do to protect them? Another thing is that during this time period, Obi-Wan has become a master and Anakin has become a full-fledged knight of his own, and they both have gone through many a mission, and one of Anakin's main motivations and drives is, I've done all this great stuff, and they want to put him on the Jedi Council to keep an eye on him because they're asking him to spy on Palpatine. And Anakin's offended because no one has ever been put on the Jedi Council at his age. Especially, no one has been on the Jedi Council without being a master. So Anakin feels a little betrayed, and both the Council and Palpatine are causing Anakin to go through turmoil, all while he's having these visions of his wife dying. Especially after he just received the wonderful news that Padme, his wife, was pregnant with their child, who he only thinks he has one child. And this comes into play later on in Anakin's journey. So Anakin is really conflicted at this point. He's torn between two separate allegiances. And this is when Palpatine, motivates him and when he basically reveals that he's the current Sith Lord who's looking for a new apprentice. Because Palpatine tells a story about his Sith master, who says he was immortal and he could do everything he could to protect the ones he loved from dying. So Anakin's like, okay, I need this power. So this all comes to a boiling point when the Jedi Council realizes that Palpatine has been manipulating everything from the background, and they go to capture him. And in this instance, it's Mace Windu versus Palpatine, and Windu wants to eliminate him because he's so much of a threat. But Anakin, in retaliation, is like, no, I need him! And then he basically chucks Windu out the window using the Force. And this is when Palpatine's like, good, you have finally come to the dark side. There's no turning back from here. You'll obtain all the power that you need, and we can rule this galaxy. So, this is when Palpatine issues Order 66 to eliminate all the Jedi. And then Anakin being Darth Vader at this point, because that's the name because when you become a Sith apprentice, you adapt the new name. This is, of course, before he has his full transformation into the Darth Vader that we all know. But now Anakin, as Darth Vader, goes around doing things for Palpatine to help eliminate the Jedi Order. This is where Anakin does the controversial thing of killing kids because they are younglings in the Jedi Order before they're Padawans, but they're already Force sensitive, so they're already learning. So Anakin has to eliminate them before they can possibly become Jedi later and become a threat to him and Palpatine. Which, what is your take on that? Because my take on it is, he's evil. Of course he would do something evil like killing kids. Like, what's your take on that?
Well, that's evil. I mean, I wouldn't go that far. You know, honestly, I have a huge conscience. I mean, like, if you think about it clearly, right? Like, Anakin had no other choice, but he had a choice for, like, I mean, he really did have a big choice. He could have just helped out Mace Windu at that point. You know what I mean?
Well,
then again,
he could have made the choice, and that was the choice that spiraled into him becoming Vader.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, for me, it's like if I was ever in Anakin's position,
right?
It's like I would never be easily that manipulated or quick. It would maybe because of the writing, maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
I personally feel
for how like he was switched on being a bad guy.
Well, here's the thing. From his well, I know that this is a joke that I'm gonna use later, but from his point of view, it was the Jedi who were evil. Because the Jedi were self-serving, like they were doing some of the same things the Sith were, only under the guise of moral righteousness. And the only reason
definitely.
And like the only reason why Anakin did do everything that Palpatine told him to do was to save Padme. But you know, that comes next in like the story of Anakin and his downfall to the Sith.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then when I think about like being in Anakin's position again, walking in his shoes, I would have just helped out like kill Palpatine altogether. Like, you know, using threat like that or as an ultimatum, that would make me sick to my stomach.
Well, you have to remember, he was having visions of his wife dying, and he's like, I have to do whatever and anything I can to prevent that from happening. So I perfectly understand where Anakin comes from. Like, even though what he does, in my opinion, isn't right, it makes sense. Like everything he does, like when he first becomes a Sith, does make sense. And hey, we're absolutely evil. Of course, Anakin probably had regrets about killing the younglings, but it's not like they could let them live, in my opinion, because they could have been a threat. But I guess
that's true.
Me being just being pretty brutal, because. But then again, you never do see evil people do truly evil things like that. Usually, they have to stop at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, granted, they didn't show the murder of the younglings. They just showed him walking in, and then, you know.
Definitely. But, yeah, that's all I can say for episode 3.
Well, no, there's still one more major thing that happens after this, remember?
Oh, you mean when he becomes the Darth Vader, or when he lost most of his body parts? One of the two.
Yeah, I mean that comes after. But this is basically the end of Anakin being Anakin.
Oh, yeah.
As we knew him up until this point. That's why I wanted to stop and, you know, have a little more discussion here before continuing on to the climax of episode 3.
Oh yeah, that was totally the end of Anakin for sure. When he struck down Mace Windu and stuff.
Right. Okay. So now that we've covered Anakin as Anakin, this is how he becomes the Darth Vader that we know him as today.
And love.
I wouldn't say I love him, since he does he kills a lot more people as Vader. But
Oh, I mean, my favorite villain overall. Like, if I had to name one villain I remember, I would just jump to Darth Vader kind of thing.
oh yeah, definitely Vader is a very iconic, very powerful villain. Like, I still have his helmet and everything.
I still have his like figurine as a kid, like the one where you had to put coins. But
Oh, oh, like the Vader bank.
yeah, I have that.
So do I. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So continue on to our discussion.
Okay. So basically, after Vader has done after Vader has done all these things, the last thing that happens before he turns into like Robot Vader is they go to the Mustafar system, where where Palpatine's partners who helped him get to power are still there, and Palpatine's like, Lord Vader, go eliminate these stragglers, and he eliminates them at orders of Palpatine. While on the Mustafar system, after Order 66 has happened, Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi are like, we have to stop these guys. Obi-Wan, I'll take care of Palpatine. This is Yoda talking, and you go take care of your pupil Anakin. He must be stopped while there's still a chance. So before he goes after Anakin, Obi-Wan goes to talk to Padme, and he's like, Padme, there's something wrong with Anakin. He must be stopped. I'm so sorry. And that's when he senses, wait, you're pregnant? It's like, oh, you're pregnant with Anakin's child. Oh dear, this is even worse. And so he goes to confront Anakin, while Padme stows away knowingly on it. He doesn't know that Padme stowed away on his ship. So Obi-Wan lands on the Mustafar system, where he meets Vader, and Vader's like very aggressive towards him when he arrives, and then Padme comes out, and then Padme's like, Anakin, and then he's like, wait, you've turned her against me as well? And that's when Anakin just goes berserk again, like, he goes crazy, and he ends up throwing Padme using the Force, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
oh wow, you just threw your
especially
own...
when she's pregnant, right?
Yeah, he just threw her, and then Obi-Wan's like, well, I've tried. You're not going to listen to reason. And so that's when they both draw their sabers, and that's when they have the most epic duel in the Star Wars franchise. Like, even if you don't want to watch the movies, if you can appreciate a well-choreographed, really nice fight scene, you need to watch the final confrontation in Revenge of the Sith. It's just my favorite scene in the entire Star Wars franchise, because of just how dynamic it is, and everything.
And plus, how you can tell like Anakin's like moves are becoming more aggressive. I
Yeah.
love it.
And then basically, the way that the fight ends is Obi-Wan has the high ground, and Anakin's like, no, I don't care. I'm going to go in to kill you. And then Obi-Wan cuts him in half. And because Mustafar is a lava planet, when he gets cut in half, he ends up landing in lava. And so Anakin's now cut in half. He's starting to burn up, and then this is where Obi-Wan starts to talk about how he was supposed to be the chosen one to bring balance to the Force and not, destroy it, and everything of that nature. It's a very emotional scene, and I know people, like as you mentioned, will hate on Anakin's acting, but no, the "I hate you" is the single most powerful thing that he could say in that scene, because this was his mentor and the closest thing he had to a father, and Jedi were supposedly all about love and selflessness, and it just vehemently "I hate you," like, very powerfully. It just illustrates that Anakin's just dead. Anakin's completely dead, and the only thing that remains is Lord Vader. So while Anakin's burning up, Obi-Wan regretfully has to leave, and he just takes his saber with him, and which is where Luke will get his lightsaber later. And he goes back to Padme, who is now dying. So Padme's now dying. So Obi-Wan and Yoda have to deliver like Padme's children, and they decide to put them both in secrecy, like split them up so that Anakin will never learn about them. And this is when the Empire that has control over the galaxy in episodes 4 through 6 comes apart, because Palpatine rescues Anakin's burning corpse while he's still barely alive but burned up, and he decides to put him in the robot suit, causing him to become Lord Vader. And this is when he senses that Padme is dead. Like he's come to his senses, and he's realized, wait a second, I'm the one who killed Padme, because he was confused. And Palpatine's like, no, you killed her, as well as the child. And that's where he utters his iconic "no," which I'm not gonna imitate. And that's when he becomes Robot Vader, essentially. And that's basically episode 3. It's my favorite episode in the Star Wars franchise because it's just so powerful and emotional. You've seen Anakin grow, and you've seen where he has been tempted by the dark side, but for him to just outright become evil is like heartbreaking, in my opinion.
No, you're not alone on that. My wife thought it was like, she cried when she found out that Annie, the boy that was adorable to her, grow into like a monster in the end, like a Frankenstein's monster, which was also like relating to that point.
And the saddest part of all is that he had noble intentions. Like, his only real intention was to save the ones he loved and cared about. But but he fell into temptation and everything. It just makes me like really sad.
Yeah, and then it goes back to your to your first statement about like how it's sort of related to religion, right?
Yeah.
How being tempted by that, like basically Palpatine was like Satan or whatever.
Right.
And then Anakin being like Adam and Eve, also being Jesus at the same time, being the proper size and stuff.
Right. Yeah, and that's basically Anakin in the first half of Star Wars. In the second half, episodes 4 through 6,
he's heavily mentioned.
Huh?
In the other half of the trilogy, he's heavily mentioned, even though not shown. Well, he is shown as Vader, but when they just use Anakin alone, it's like always on a high regard, right?
Right. Because this is the second half of... Well, okay, so the second half of Anakin's journey isn't so much about Anakin, but about Luke. So we're going to cover Luke instead of Anakin now, because Anakin being... Well, we'll cover both Luke and Lord Vader as the Robot Vader that we all know, because they're both vital to, this storyline at this point. And to just cover Anakin's part would be a disservice to Star Wars in general, since this might be his journey, but his son is now the driving force behind everything that happens.
Oh yeah. Like, you can still tell, some of Anakin was in Luke in a way, like some personality traits.
Right.
Like flying and stuff. So basically it's still Anakin per se, but through his other generation.
Right, through his son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to start us off, we start with Luke on the farm dreaming about dreaming about going to, school and, leaving his farm behind so that he can, become an ace pilot for the rebellion. The rebellion to, take down the Empire that Palpatine and Vader have worked to establish in the first half of the Star Wars series. And he's like, well, I want to go through this, I want to go. But what happens is Leia, basically, the way Star Wars Episode 4 starts is Vader has captured Princess Leia, and Princess Leia has information to, to stop Vader's Death Star that was just recently built. So Vader's like, fine, you're going to be tortured and things like that. And this is where he just chokes someone, he has the Force, but he just chokes someone out with his hands. He doesn't need to, but he does anyway. That just shows how, just awesome he is. He's just evil. You see how evil he is, and, that's, it's the beginning of an icon, as I said in the last episode. Vader's just evil.
Definitely.
And so basically, because Leia sent the droids out, Luke ends up with them, and the message is for Obi-Wan Kenobi, because Leia has heard about him. So Luke basically takes the droids to Obi-Wan, who is now known as Old Ben, because he's like, I failed, and now I'm just going to live in this, squalor in Tatooine, watching over Luke to make sure he's safe throughout his life.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Obi-Wan teaches Luke, hey, I'm going to teach you how to be a Jedi, just like your father, who died in the Clone Wars.
And it's kind of weird that it kind of parallels, from Anakin to Luke's kind of story. Remember how Obi-Wan didn't want to train, or didn't want to do anything with Anakin back then?
Yeah.
And then he's going to train Luke instead?
Well, he has to train Luke because he's he's the galaxy's last hope and everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Which is pretty good, too. I mean, it parallels a lot, how Luke didn't use the lightsaber, just like how Anakin didn't do it back then.
Right. Because Luke...
In the first...
Luke is a farmer. He knows nothing about, the Jedi, or, Jedi or the Force, to be honest.
Everything was self-taught throughout later on, too.
Yeah. But, yeah, basically to kickstart, Episode 4, we're going to skip how Han shoots first, and all this other stuff, and basically cut to when they approach the Death Star. Because, once again, like I said, I recommend watching the 6 movies. This is supposed to be a quick overview that has turned into a very long overview. So, yeah, this is a quick overview that's turned into a very long overview. But, long story short, they end up at the Death Star right after Vader has ordered the Death Star to blow up a planet. A whole planet completely gone. Once again, Obi-Wan and Vader meet for the second time. And it's you were my master, but now I have become the master. And that's what Vader says to Obi-Wan, after, after not seeing him since he chopped him in half. And so, Vader kills Obi-Wan, and Luke is just like, no! You just killed him! He was supposed to teach me everything. After they rescue Leia, Luke joins the rebellion, and he goes on the mission to destroy the Death Star, where Vader, goes after him, because he's like, no, I don't want you blowing up my Death Star, son. Stop it, you're going to get grounded if you blow up my Death Star. And so, Luke is like, I don't know how to do this. And then he's like, but then he hears the voice of Obi-Wan going, no, Luke, you have to give into your feelings. You need to use the Force and let it guide you. And that's where Luke, starts to become, Force sensitive. And he, manages to blow up the Death Star, causing Vader to just fly away in defeat. And fine, we're gonna plot this later. And that's basically the simple gist of Star Wars Episode 4, because because 4 is my second favorite movie, but not a lot happens in the journey of Anakin Skywalker, seeing as he's now become Lord Vader, and this is more of Luke's story at this point.
Indeed.
So do you have any comments about how Vader was portrayed in this movie before we move on to Empire Strikes Back?
Well, all I can say is about like the first movie was like for the fourth movie was or the fourth episode is that Vader was like more of an impact like to the whole progression. Like he also was like the driving force for what happened. Like Luke had to save the princess, who was spoiler alert, his sister too, right?
Yeah, Luke and Leia are brother and sister. Leia is the second child that Vader never knew he had because he knows about Luke.
And also they also kissed in the first movie.
Yeah, we were trying to gloss it. I was trying to gloss over that one.
Yeah, but there's some things we cannot avoid because they did it again in the second movie in episode 5.
Yep. Star Wars.
Yeah,
Gotta love it.
It's first of its kind, honestly. When it started out like that.
Well, to be fair, they didn't know they were related until episode 6.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. Like they didn't know any better, and we were all shocked as much as anybody else was back then.
More or less when we figured it out in episode 6, we glossed over the fact that they had kids multiple times.
Yep.
But yeah. Okay, back to Lord Vader's story. So
yeah.
Okay, well, so yeah, the rebels are now on Hoth, and Vader's like, okay, troops, take out the rebels on Hoth. And then Luke's like, okay, well, now that Hoth has fallen, I have to go train with this old Jedi Master Yoda because this is what the voice of old Ben is telling me in my head. So that's when Luke goes to meet with, that's where Luke goes to meet with Yoda, and where Luke finally learns, okay, well, this is what the Force really is about. And then there's a nice bit of symbolism in Episode 5, where Luke sees himself in Darth Vader's armor because going through the swamp of Dagobah, Luke sees visions of Darth Vader and he fights him. And this is where like the mask falls off and instead of Vader's face being there, he sees himself. This is foreshadowing. This is foreshadowing that maybe there's an important connection between both Vader and Luke.
Totally. Like that's one of those like things like that made me like scratch my head as a kid. Like, how come he's doing how come his face is there? Well, I didn't know any better back then,
right.
Or what foreshadowing was. And then when it was later revealed, like
wait, save the reveal.
Like the overall truth that Luke.
Save the reveal.
Luke.
There's still more. There's still more in Episode 5 that we need to talk about before we get to the reveal.
Oh yeah, there's more. There's like more things to say about it, but I'd rather let you handle this, Chris.
Okay, thanks. But so after we get them in the swamp, basically what Han and Leia were doing is they get captured because they're like, okay, yeah, I can trust this guy. They can't trust that guy because, well, Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian, because Lando's like, okay, this is Bespin Cloud City. It's my friend's place. I can trust him. Turns out the friend that Vader had gone there before his friend and set up a deal with them to capture Han and Leia. So Luke, sensing this, goes, no, I have to go back to my friends. And so he abandons his training with Yoda in the middle of it. Well, even though that's against Yoda's wishes, like, no, you need to stay and get trained. If you leave now, you might never become a true Jedi. And he's like, no, this is too important. So he basically flies off to Cloud City, and this is when he has the confrontation with Vader. And Vader, being the more skilled fighter with the Force and with a lightsaber, ends up backing Luke into a corner after chopping his hand off. This is where Vader reveals the most important truth to Luke, because he's like, I heard about you from old Ben. You killed my father in the Clone Wars. And that's when Vader retorts
with, I'm your father.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, this is where the big reveal comes from of, no, Vader is Luke's father. And that's why you saw Luke's face in Vader's armor earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vader's like, join me. We can rule this galaxy as father and son. And then Luke's like, I'll never join you. And so Vader's like, so be it, and, leaves his son to fall to his death, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, Luke gets saved at the last minute by the Falcon, and he goes back to train with Yoda, and it's like, well, that's the end of episode 5. It was and it's a pretty big impact because, well, it's a pretty big impact if you were watching it in the order that the movies were released, because obviously if you saw the prequels first, and of course you know that Luke is Vader's son, but, watching the original trilogy, it was like, what? This is like a mind-blowing revelation.
Yeah, like, to me, as a kid, that I was so shocked as hell to know that he was actually his father.
Yeah, it's like, wait, really? All, really all this type of, all this ridiculous, all this type of stuff, it's like, out of everything that you hear in Star Wars, it's like, hearing that, we make fun of it now, everyone makes fun of it, because, it was such a big reveal that it did have to get spread throughout everything and anything.
Yeah, during his time, it was really, it was one of cinema's biggest achievements, in my opinion.
Yeah.
With the reveal, how it was orchestrated, it was just, one of those things you would least expect, and George Lucas wanted this movie to be completely child-friendly and stuff.
Yeah. With all the hand slicing off and everything of that nature. But hey, we have the Ewoks to make up for that in the next movie.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last movie, Return of the Jedi. Basically, everything doesn't get kicked off until this. Well, basically, everything regarding Vader doesn't get kicked off until the second half of the movie. Up until that point, it's Luke coming into his own as a great hero and everything of that nature. So basically, the rebellion ends up on the forest moons of Endor, where the Empire has where the Empire has set up its defenses for its second star that's being built. And they're like, fine. And so Luke actually goes to meet Vader, and this is where we actually finally get to meet the Emperor, because Luke willingly goes to Vader, but this is after Yoda dies, and Luke gets a few more revelations, yeah, you're a true master now, but your father was once a good man. You can still save him. These are Yoda's last words for him. So Luke, and that, this is where he learns that Leia is his sister. And before he goes to meet their father, Luke tells Leia these important details, that they were brother and sister this whole time. And then Luke's like, well, I have to go to my death now because I can't handle the fact that I kissed my sister multiple times. This is awkward. So yeah, he goes to try to change their father. And so he basically surrenders and turns himself into the Emperor, and he's like, I demand to meet with my father. And then he's like, fine. And then they're like, fine, you can meet with Lord Vader. And so Lord Vader So basically now Vader brings Luke before Palpatine, and Palpatine's like, oh, I can sense great potential from you, young Skywalker. And so he's like, well, you know what, I want to make you my apprentice now. And
he also basically dumped Vader in front of him in nonchalant sense.
Yeah, he basically tells him to kill his father, but Luke's like, no, I'm not gonna do this. So this is, they have a fight, but, where Luke does give into aggression, partly, but, he doesn't fall into, this is where Luke could have become just like his father, but Luke actually beats it in the end, and he's like, no. And then Palpatine's like, well, since you don't want to do this, you have to die. But this is where Vader gets his redemption, because he sees Palpatine trying to kill his son, and he's like, no, wait, this is my son. I've been wrong this whole time. I have to help my son eliminate this guy. And this is where Vader's like, well, So he just picks Palpatine up and just throws him down the ventilation shaft and lets him die.
Yeah. That was really a powerful scene, too. And then it kind of, like, went back and saying that was a prophecy being fulfilled by Anakin, too.
Yeah. Because, like, now... But doing this cost him his life. And Vader's like, well, I'm about to die. And so he has Luke remove the helmet and says some, like, farewell words to him about how he's, like, you know, the new protector, like, of the Jedi and things like that, and how he's going to accomplish great things. And so they have a ceremony where they burn Anakin's corpse now, because he's Anakin. He's no longer the evil Vader. He's Anakin again. And then in the last scene of Return of the Jedi, you see Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda all as Force ghosts together one last time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's...
And about episode, like, 6, like, if people are going to watch the original, know that, if it's those who've already seen the original, by the way, you're going to see a little, like, subtle differences when you see, like Luke's masters and father. Like, if you saw the original trilogy, you're going to see a different Anakin.
Right, because...
compared to now.
Right, because in subsequent re-releases, Lucas has changed, like, has made some changes, like, that's where the Han shot first thing comes from, and other things of that nature, but they changed it to a Hayden Christensen ghost, because now we know what Anakin looks like when he was Anakin, instead of the wizened old man that they had before.
Yeah. I mean, there was a parody of that in some movies and shows, like, how come he gets to be young and stuff like that, which I found hilarious, but still, it's one of those powerful scenes when you see, like your master and father and your other master there. That's pretty, like, decent.
Right. Okay, well, and that, everyone, that was Anakin's journey. I would like to thank you for joining us on this extra long podcast. So, this was Herok, and...
Leo.
Thank you for listening. Bye.